What is up, everyone, and welcome back to Unpopular, the pop culture podcast. This is episode 5, and for all 16 of you that are still around, you know who you two fuckers are. We were at 18 subscribers, and then in our little break, they're like, you know what? We're done. We're unsubscribing. We don't need you anyway.
Yeah, you probably got the worst farts.
Yeah. But the other 16 of you, we need you.
Yes, please.
Don't go anywhere.
We're that desperate. Just come on.
So, once again, back at the helm, I'm Larry Downs. This is
James Seeloff.
And back in the seat.
Nick Haskin.
Nick is back joining us once again, as you know, as all 16 of you know. Nick was sick last time we shot an episode, and it's nice to have him back in the seat. And we have a little bit of a different arrangement for him. We're moving the room around constantly, so.
Yeah. It's good to actually, because Nick, from my perspective, was always kind of blocked off, and I just couldn't see his gorgeous mug from behind all those screens. But now he's
I was behind the monitor.
Yeah. But now we have his face visible to us, and
I think we all feel better.
Yeah, it's good. It's there's just.
And I've
better flow.
Let's take a look at Nick's shirt that he's wearing today. Was this a Christmas gift?
This was a Christmas gift. Okay, so it's our two baby fur girls. We've got Sophie here. That's Daddy's little girl. That's my little princess. And then here's Luna, which she's the ninja, but not so graceful. But we love her too anyways.
I thought it was a great shirt. I figured we would put a spotlight on that.
Fantastic. I had no idea that it was a custom gig.
And is it just
awesome.
me, or does Nick look way more professional with a pair of headphones on? He looks like he should be operating, in like some sort of battle room, kind of like in both of the movies that we're talking about today.
Yeah. I can agree with that, yeah. He most certainly does look like he would be the man in the chair.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what he is.
Systems check.
That's right.
Yeah, that feels good. Feels good.
It feels right. Yeah. So, for episode 5 today, I thought we would do something a little bit different since me and James went to the theaters and saw a new movie of something that we both enjoy, which is a second movie in a universe. Not really a shared universe, but it's made by the same guy. But yeah, we went and saw Shin Ultraman. And so, since James is such a big Shin Godzilla fan, and I've at least seen it a good couple times, we figured we would have our Shinniest episode ever.
So much Shin.
It's pure Shin.
So much Shin. It's like all the Shin. It's just...
No bullshitting. So we're going to be talking about Shin Godzilla and Shin Ultraman because this is, outside of, just like the other pop culture stuff that we like, Japan holds a special place, I think, in both of our hearts for numerous reasons. You can see on our set, we got a Mazinger, we got an Ava unit, Transformers, you got that goop monster, whatever the fuck that is from Godzilla or whatever.
He's literally just vomit. That's what his name, or translate to vomit in Japanese.
Okay, I dig it. And you have actually Shin Godzilla over there.
Yeah, the big man himself.
Yeah, he's falling over, but
he's a little drunk.
Like most of James's set, it's all falling apart and broken, and I haven't had the money to replace it because we're not YouTube millionaires yet.
It's beautifully.
R.I.P. Tommy.
Just like myself.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Tommy Wiseau still remains down.
Yeah, he's down.
That was his spot over there with the tape.
Yeah, but he's in a cracked frame out in the other room. But
I was telling James I'm having a hard time justifying buying 2 frames for a Tommy Wiseau picture.
Dude, I'm sure that he probably sells copies of The Room on DVD for $60.
Oh yeah.
It's like he's probably like he saw Neil Breen's like DVD price range and probably said, fuck that motherfucker.
What the fuck? So, we're talking about Shin Godzilla and Shin Ultraman, and what's really cool is they're both written and directed by Hideaki Anno, who is the creator of the single greatest anime of all time, Fight Me About It, Neon Genesis Evangelion.
You cannot part this man from the Evangelion.
Yeah, and I think I'm the only one in the room that's watched it. Am I correct?
You're correct. But
correct.
Fuck both of you guys. You hate art. Why do you hate art?
Hey, I'll say it's because of Shin Godzilla. Because I don't really watch anime.
Yeah,
I really don't. But
neither of you guys really watch anime. No, what's up with that, dude?
That's the thing, man. Like I used to. I had like a little bit of exposure when I was a kid, like Vampire Hunter D and Akira when they were on Sci-Fi when I was a kid, but it never and then I got into Dragon Ball when I was in my angsty ass fucking teens, and
Sure.
it's all about the power.
His power level is over 9,000.
Right, it's like. And
Well, Dragon Ball's still like that. Dragon Ball hasn't changed in
No,
like 30
it hasn't.
fucking years.
No, it's just the same shit, and eventually you just get. Especially because I was brought up on the Toonami shit.
Oh, yeah.
And that was even worse because they spent half the episode just filling it with screaming.
Yeah, and I think that's how everyone got their first exposure to one of the second greatest anime series of all time, Mobile Suit Gundam.
Gundam Wang!
Gundam Wang, baby, which is a terrible story, but has cool robots.
Cool robots are kind of the only thing that matters sometimes.
And in Gundam, it really is. Unless you're talking about the original storyline, which is very... What's cool about the original Mobile Suit storyline, it came out in the 70s, and it was really... It wasn't catered to adults.
Was that the stuff with the burning hand Gundam? Or was that...
That's way later on.
Oh, Jesus Christ. So it has been around.
I think the first Gundam came out in 68, maybe? I'll correct myself in the editing later, but I think it's 68. Or 72, maybe. I don't know. It's the early 70s. And it really generated an older audience because the focus of Gundam is politics and war. And what's cool about Gundam, at least in my eyes, when I look at Gundam, is that there's no good or bad guys. It's just everyone trying to accomplish their own agenda. And obviously, there's some bad guys in Gundam. There's heavily militant,
but there's a spectrum.
Right, exactly. Right. But yeah, other than that, Gundam's just about cool robots, dude.
Yeah, I like that. Anything that kind of plays along that gray area, and you have a lot of characters you're identifying with, and frankly, there's other people that are going to agree with you and say that character's garbage because of this or that. And, that's what makes a great series.
Yeah, except for Iron-Blooded Orphans was really good. Nick watched a good chunk of that. I think he's on the last episode.
All of it. Oh, yeah. I want to rewatch it all and then the last episode again.
Dude, that was like a tearjerker of a series. There was a lot of moments that really just kind of hit hard. It was a phenomenal Gundam series. That's what...
Human debris! Before we get...
I'm not even going to say we're going to the ticket booth because this is a weird doubleheader episode today where we're talking about 2 movies. Is this a double feature?
Fortunately, everybody, God gave us 2 shins.
2 shins.
2 shins.
And there's actually a third one on the way because Hideaki Anno is doing God's work.
Yeah, you got your third shin right here for you.
And he's doing Shin Kamen Rider, which comes out in Japan this year, which I'm super stoked about. I wasn't super familiar with the character. I just knew who he was upon appearance. And so I went back and started watching the show. And it's super interesting. It's like Power Rangers if there was one Power Ranger and he had a motorcycle. So it's interesting. And plus it's from the 70s. So there's like a Shimaru jump do kick, like a weird disco karaoke
kind of like
intro.
The Japanese Spider-Man intro that he's
Spider-Man. I don't want to keep dragging on before talking about the movies, but I was talking to James about Spider-Man.
Oh my God, can you imagine Japanese Shin Spider-Man?
Oh, it'd be great. But the original live-action Spider-Man, if anyone's not familiar, is fucking hilarious. He is the... the emissary of hell. He goes who are you? He shows up I am Spider-Man, the emissary of hell. And he has a Megazord and everything called Leopardon. Yeah. And it's really silly and goofy. But I'll play a clip of it while I'm talking about it in this bit. But anyway, I want to talk about Shin Godzilla first because you're super well versed on this movie. And I've only watched it a couple times. I think it's really great. But as I was telling you, the last time I was trying to watch it, or the last couple times I was trying to watch it, it was after a night shift, or I was really tired. So an hour in, I would fall asleep, or I would wake up and try finishing it, and I would doze off. Because honestly, it's a long movie. It is a non-traditional Godzilla movie.
It is, but it isn't.
It is traditional, I guess, to the first one.
Exactly.
The original.
Correct. It's absolutely the most true to the very first Godzilla movie, in the sense that it conveys what Godzilla was originally intended to be.
Right.
You know, it's basically a cautionary tale. You know?
Right. Of nuclear disaster.
Yeah.
For the most part. Because what Godzilla was originally about, was he about the atomic bomb?
Yeah, Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Okay, yeah. He was a representation of nuclear warfare, basically.
So with that said, it's like, their first movie, it's heavy.
Yeah.
I mean, something like that. You look at it back in retrospect, it still has that stark contrast, even though it's a guy walking around in a rubber suit.
Sure. And I think, what was it, almost immediately after the first Godzilla, it turned into what we recognize as Godzilla, which was kaiju wars, monster fighting monster.
Monstrous threats, and when it was given to, or when it was broadcast to, or not, when it was released to American audiences, they Americanized it and they put Raymond Burr in there, who, if people don't know who Raymond Burr is.
I'm not familiar with Raymond Burr.
Who he was? Perry Mason. You remember Perry Mason?
No.
Old. He was probably before your time.
Yeah,
I'm an old man. So Perry Mason. Anybody who knows who Raymond Burr is, you know who Perry Mason is. He's in the original Godzilla. He's also in Godzilla 1989.
Okay.
To reprise his role, which is kind of like a direct sequel to the first Gojira movie.
So kind of like movies that we're getting these days, which aren't sequels or prequels. They are like, oh, we're reboots because we're sequels of the original film. We went through a different path from the second one.
Yeah, I think it was Godzilla 83. I can't remember the date. Godzilla 83, but anyhow, yeah. Whatever. But yeah, Raymond Burr's in it. And the movie, it's very terrifying. And Shin Godzilla recaptures all of that gravitas, and it also puts a modern spin on it in, the political commentary along with it. And then the director style is
let's talk
fantastic.
About fucking art for a second. I'm trying to pull this up on IMDb so I can get a 2-word sentence of what the movie's about. But so once again, this is Shin Godzilla 2016, directed and written by Hideaki Anno, the creator of Neon Genesis Evangelion, the greatest anime ever made. Fight me about it. And it is roughly about Japan has plunged into chaos upon the appearance of a giant monster. And like I said, this is a non-traditional Godzilla movie, so we're not seeing Godzilla fighting a bunch of other monsters or all this other shit. It is more so a recreation of the original from 1954, correct?
Yeah, just about a monster wreaking havoc on Tokyo.
Right, but as opposed to nuclear warfare, this Shin Godzilla is supposed to represent the Fukushima nuclear...
The tidal wave, the nuclear incident where,
all the nuclear waste got swept into the ocean.
The power plant was going into meltdown and, the fallout from that. And this movie is kind of like a political commentary on... basically the government's response to that and how they had to keep on going. They had to move at a molasses pace.
Right.
To be able to remedy this situation.
And this is stuff that we don't realize, I guess, as foreigners.
No, as Americans, we don't really know how complicated that kind of stuff is.
We're like, oh, you just go in with fucking guns.
Right,
it's just like,
you do what you gotta do. And right. But, it's way more complicated than that. Because you gotta remember at this time, Japan didn't really have a military either. Right. They had a self-defense force.
Yeah, but they haven't had to militarize since World War II, correct?
Yeah.
And this does take place in more modern times, I guess 2016,
Right.
And so it starts, the nuclear waste is what creates our monster. And what's interesting about this Godzilla is that the movie starts out with... everyone, different parts of Japan going about their business, but then there's people trying to drive under this underwater tunnel, and there's a crack in it, and all the water is pouring, and it's like red. Is it blood?
Red. It looks like blood. It looks like basically like fluid.
I think hatchling fluid.
Something weird. It has an organic feel to it right off the bat because it looks basically like blood.
Yeah.
So, and it's all seen from perspective of found footage, or not found footage, but
very similar to found footage.
Or I would say streaming footage because some of it's being broadcast live.
Right.
And so there's all this stuff going on and all this chaos, and along with it, you get that impression because you're only seeing things from the perspective of the people.
Right. And I think this is what deters, if there is negative reviews about this movie, it's that there is not enough Godzilla, and it's more of a focus on the people, which is, I think, an interesting turn for a Godzilla movie, because Godzilla's just been smash 'em up, beat 'em up monsters for so long. I found this to be really interesting.
Yeah, but I would probably normally complain about that kind of thing. But the thing is, though, you got to understand that this movie, you got to use Godzilla effectively.
Right.
You know, and they do it here very well.
And what's different about this Godzilla as opposed to other Godzillas is that he actually changes multiple times throughout the movie. Right. He doesn't start out as Godzilla. He starts out as like a weird little hatchling monster in the water.
At first, we don't really see, presumably, what he starts off as. We just kind of see where he's come along as far as what stage he's at,
right,
and upon his first appearance when we do, and it's just a big fucking tail.
Yeah.
Which was absolutely fucking terrifying.
Well, it's like, at first they think it's just like an earthquake or something
right,
weird.
You know, just some kind of fault.
But they're like, no, it's a monster, and then we see the footage of the tail
right,
on
because
TV.
of all, and you can't see it because of all the steam, because the temperature of the ocean's so high, and it's a good effective way to start things off.
And what's unfortunate, I think, about this movie and Shin Ultraman is that Japanese CGI just fucking sucks.
It does.
It's so terrible.
Even in its finest scenes, you're still like,
it sticks out like a sore thumb,
man.
And they love it. They love
it. It's got Godzilla certain times has a certain bad jiggle to him that you notice. You know, you're just kind of like, eh.
Well, it's like, go ahead.
But other than that, overall, I don't feel like it affects the movie.
No, because like I've said, it's more focused on the politics and the people and the talking heads than it is Godzilla.
And he's still effectively terrifying.
Right. So as Godzilla...
Y'all can build robots, but you can't get your CGI down. Just saying.
It blows my mind. Japanese CGI is terrible, and I don't know if they just...
But
that's what they want to roll with.
I think that's almost kind of like a creative choice.
Yeah.
Like, at this point.
They're like, no, it's good. Like, you guys
deal with it, Americans.
Right.
You love all of our other shit, so...
Yeah, I think it's shitty, but...
yeah, whatever.
So, as Godzilla keeps changing, he keeps evolving, he ends up getting, like, a body and flippers and moving onto land. They weren't expecting him to ever get onto land, and he's destroying shit.
And the carnage he's just moving.
Yeah.
All he's doing is just moving across the land, and he's just causing all this carnage. But as he goes on, like, you know, he's obviously not adapted to move on land because he doesn't even have arms. He's just pushing himself across the friggin' the ground and just trailing across, and then they're like, oh, he can't really survive. He's expected to collapse under his weight.
Right.
And then all of a sudden he just starts sprouting arms and stands upright.
Right. Well, the thing is interesting about this, like, they do, even though the CGI is shitty, they do a really good job of making Godzilla look, and I think you used the word very best when we were watching it the first time together, alien.
Yes.
You know, especially when he gets on land, he looks like a creature that was an aquatic creature that is just getting onto dry land for the first time and struggling
100%.
to figure it out. And then as he evolves and stands upright, he's like still fish baby-y, but he's just kind of weird looking. He has these weird alien fish eyes that are just like, there's no emotion to him whatsoever.
They're unblinking. They're just completely bulbous. They just kind of on the surface of his head, and it's he doesn't look right.
No. So he keeps wreaking havoc in the city, and Japan finally has to militarize, and they try to take care of it, and they just, nothing's effective, right?
None whatsoever. They send planes, helicopters, you name it. And the red tape that they have to go through to get there to implement all this stuff is just ridiculous. And then there's complications with civilians still involved in all this garbage. It's really tense, and it gives you an idea of how frustrating it is to deal with it, you know?
Yeah. And this is when they finally create a special task force in their, like, shifty little headquarters, and, like, we see kind of the creation of the task force that normally takes care of
Which is an awesome, cool, like, montage of, you know, bringing everybody together, and Everybody's got their twerks.
So when do they freeze him the first time? Do they coat him in something? Like he eventually evolves
no.
enough.
He doesn't. They didn't coat him with anything. What they did with the first time is they finally call on the Americans because they try to attack and he basically goes back to the ocean to cool back down.
Okay.
And then he comes back evolved.
Yeah, and he's finally got the black scales and everything.
When he comes back, he looks like the Godzilla that we're probably way more familiar with, and it's terrifying.
He's super fucking
and we're
cool looking.
Yeah, dude. Like he looks. Sorry, Sleepwalker.
See a Sleepwalker.
But dude, this is what we're.
It's just such a interesting
fucking
look for Godzilla.
Man. He's fucking terrifying, dude. He is. And the thing is like when you first see him, that's when we first get the Godzilla theme.
Yeah.
Like like. Like
fucking Pharaoh monks get up.
Dude.
Or what's that called? I don't even remember what that song's called. That song from the 90s.
Yeah, dude. It's like, a traditional Godzilla.
But speaking of the music, what's really interesting about the music in this is that, and by interesting, I mean interesting to me because it has to do with Evangelion.
You're going to go with this because they share some common... Yeah, I know.
They've repurposed the headquarters battle theme music and a ton of other shit where it's basically just Evangelion music.
Yeah.
But against Godzilla. And what's cool is, like, if you've seen Evangelion before and then you watch Shin Godzilla, the way he shoots each scene, each angle, it's just like how he drew Evangelion. We don't just have a straightforward shot of a scientist. It's shot from the lower pocket in front of someone, but it's focusing on a character back here.
Or through a screen.
A screen. It's all very interesting shots. He has the typical Hideaki Anno blank Japan skyline, or with the telephone wires and everything. Just like the way he shoots buildings and stuff is just like how they drew it for Evangelion. So it's really interesting, and by interesting, like I said, I mean cool, because it has to do with...
He's still emulating his style through his film.
Right, and that's what, I mean, honestly, that's what really does it for me in this movie.
Figured, yeah, of course I will. I mean, it's great that because we both love Shin Godzilla, but it's for our own
totally different reasons.
But yeah, because for me, it's like, as a big Godzilla fan, like, just seeing him back to form in this sense, like... He was a real horror icon. Yeah,
and honestly, it's just artsy. This is like the first different, slow-paced, it's very experimental and bold for a Godzilla movie.
That's a great thing. Like, so they bring him... Okay, we left off where they launched their attack. He comes back.
He's all badass.
Yeah, he's fucking evolved. He's suited to do what he's got to do. But he's still just basically walking.
Yeah.
So finally... They go ahead and they finally find a way to hurt him, thanks to the U.S., by sending in their fucking stealth bombers.
You're welcome.
And, they come in with their bombers, and they finally make a nick on him. But when they do, they fucking pay a goddamn price.
Oh, doesn't it charge him up, basically?
Basically, it's like, okay, they make him bleed.
Nobody makes me bleed.
Nobody makes God.
My own blood.
That's right.
Nobody makes God bleed.
That's right.
And it's the only time that Godzilla does anything other than walk.
And so this is when he's all purple. He's just laser beams shooting out of everything.
He fucking roars for the first time.
And it starts out as flames.
And he's just fucking... And then the music, dude. That music with that soprano.
Yeah.
Oh my God, dude. You're just like... He's just flames and just sprawling out over all the streets. Pouring.
Oh, but what's cool is eventually the flames become so high powered it just turns into an energy beam.
And it just sounds like a shriek.
Oh yeah, it's like a laser.
Yeah, and it's just like the music along with it, and he's just turning around and laying waste to everything around him.
Because this is the first time we've seen lasers come out of his spikes too. On his back,
dude.
right?
Because they're dropping more bombs, and he has basically this radar sense. The dude fucking evolves.
Sure, yeah.
As he goes along. So
I won't question Godzilla.
So he just wipes out the fucking bombers, and that's that. And then he goes to sleep.
Yeah.
Because he's, he's burned out. And
it's just him frozen there.
If you get he basically goes into, a cool down mode. And if you get a chance, look up the lyrics to that fucking music when he's like, in his fit of rage.
Yeah. Deep shit.
Quick question, Godzilla related, but interjection. Should I watch Godzilla versus King Kong?
I mean, if you want to watch a new movie.
Yeah, I liked it. It's entertaining for sure. It's like, it's not artsy or anything.
I didn't care for it. It was too sci-fi for me. It was really a far cry from the previous Godzilla movie as far as the technology they have at their disposal.
But wait a minute. What about like
Kong?
King Ghidorah? Like Godzilla or King of the Monsters? Did you like it more than King of the Monsters?
I liked King of the Monsters. I didn't like Godzilla vs Kong.
Really?
Though. Yeah, Godzilla.
Most people thought otherwise.
Really, because Godzilla vs Kong to me it was like time travel-y, weird spaceship sci-fi
that's
shit.
And I
didn't care for it. I was like, this feels like too far of a leap.
That a lot of.
So it's probably not too much sci-fi for me.
No, you'd probably.
I think they would like it. I liked Kong versus Godzilla more myself.
Really?
Yeah, and most people agree. Most people hate King of the Monsters.
Well, fuck you and most people.
Honestly,
fuck those people.
I like King of the Monsters, but it's honestly, it's weird. Like I remember first seeing the trailer for King of the Monsters, and they played an epic version of like Claire de Lune till like the apocalypse, and it like. I want the world to end to this music.
There won't be giant monsters at the end
I
of
know.
our world, unfortunately.
Which makes me really upset because I think that, that world should end, and it should be by giant monsters.
Right. So,
but will there be power armor?
No, there won't.
No.
There won't be.
That gives us too much hope. We don't deserve that.
Don't give me hope.
Don't give me
So, at this point...
I'm not that much of an analyst.
Godzilla has gone into hibernation. And I wrote in my notes because I was getting tired, and
you're going into hibernation.
And I was going into hibernation myself. I checked to see how much of the movie was left in my notes. It says, Godzilla's just started hibernating. There's still an hour of the movie left.
It's a slow burn, ladies and gentlemen, but hang in there. It's worth it.
All right. Well, we see more talking head shit, more politics, more government shit.
Red
about
tape.
them. Trying to figure out what to do or when Godzilla's gonna wake up. Yada yada yada. And eventually, Godzilla does wake up.
Eventually, he does. They wake him up. They basically decide that they have a game plan, and the idea is to freeze him. And they do this through some kind of coagulation.
They have like a bunch of fire trucks with hoses that have some weird science shit.
They have these platoons with all these chemical feeders and stuff like that. Long story short, they basically freeze him. Yeah, they turn him into a statue. And...
Oh, so after they freeze him, he's just a giant rock statue in the middle of Japan, kind of like a monument.
But he's not that. He will eventually wake back up.
Right, and we get a slow shot of the tail, and we see that it's got a bunch of fucking creatures.
Almost like filament. You don't see it at first because you see that his tail, it looks almost kind of frayed.
Yeah.
And then you look more closely, and it pans up and twisting as it progresses up. You see these organic objects or like Godzilla wings
and weird this whole movie, a lot of like slow timpani, like boom 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 boom, and like great soundtrack to give just that eerie feel that this Godzilla is not our friend. This Godzilla is not like the Godzilla we've been used to for the last 50 years. This is the monster that he was
intended to be.
Right, he's a monster, and I love that he's kind of a monument. He's left as a monument in the middle of Japan, just kind of like to remember, this. It's really eerie and really good.
And it makes you wonder, as he evolves, that, his next phase, he would fit. He wouldn't be the kaiju that we know him. That's for certain. Because it's like, if we got a sequel to this, like a direct sequel, and he evolves into this next form, I feel like it wouldn't feel like a Godzilla movie.
Yeah.
And I don't know how I feel about that, But I'm still intrigued. I would still love to see where they would go with that,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's what happens in Shin Godzilla. Like we said before, this is a modern day look and almost critique of how Japan handles a crisis, or how slow they were to handle a major, natural crisis, and it's just kind of a joke.
Oh,
because
right.
there is humor littered in.
Oh,
Just
right,
like
right.
listening to all of these bigwigs sit in a room together and just talk, and you're like, these are just people. Like, and some of them are just senile old people that don't know what the fuck they're doing.
It also shows kind of like, how respect is. Like, basically, if you don't have enough tenure, if you're too young, you're not going to be taken seriously.
Exactly.
That's often to the detriment to, like, if you're making way for only tradition and the elderly, and that's not necessarily, you need to have somebody that has your ear close to the ground, is younger. Yeah. There has to be balance.
A young ambassador.
Yeah, because even from the get-go, the beginning of the movie,
right.
a younger person's the first one to be like, it's a monster.
It's a monster. I think it's something. He's considered a radical amongst everybody else. It's very conservative,
right?
And he's the man that's basically on the button,
Yeah.
And it's just, you see that frustration and the red tape and stuff, and they do it really well. I get it. It's great that they can have a parody in Japan, though.
Right.
Or satire of their government.
So if you're looking for a Godzilla movie that is totally outside of... Yep. I'm going to close this out for Shin Godzilla while James goes pee. But anyway...
I gotta pee, too.
No! Everyone can't go pee. I can't be the only one down here.
I'm not going to pee. I'm just grabbing a beer.
Oh, I thought you said you were going to pee. Well, you're
get
gonna
a
have
trough.
to pee in a little bit, probably.
I will probably have to pee in a little bit, but we'll cross that bridge when we get.
So if you're looking for a Godzilla movie that is outside of the norm, not just monkey versus lizard or, battles or stuff like that, Shin Godzilla is the one to go for. Like you said, it's a modern day critique on just how the politics in Japan work. And Godzilla is once again a nuclear weapon or a symbol of nuclear this or that. And if that's the kind of thing you're into, and if you like Neon Genesis Evangelion as much as I do, you'll definitely want to watch Shin Godzilla.
But then that note, I'm not a hater of any kind of monkey versus lizard shit either. I mean, I'm all game for it. But I mean, Shin Godzilla, it's like got a special place in my heart.
Yeah, I mean, in fact,
so I should watch it.
You should definitely.
You should watch Shin Godzilla. I mean, you might like it.
Godzilla vs. King Kong.
Oh,
you should. I think you should watch. I think you should watch Kong versus Godzilla. I think you'll like it.
You know the shit I like, Larry. I mean, too sci-fi for me.
It's just like, it's not that the fact that it was too sci-fi. It's just that it was such a far cry from the previous one, and that just it felt kind of soulless.
But
to me.
they've been going about the Middle Earth stuff for not Middle Earth, Hollow Earth stuff for a minute.
Yeah.
Like, they've been talking about that. Like, that's where all the I just want to see more kaiju. I want to see...
I know you do. I know. You're a simp for fucking giant monsters. Crush me.
Well, that's a whole different... Snoo is a whole different thing.
Step on me.
Yeah. Just annihilate me.
That's a totally different category on Pornhub.
Yeah.
Anyway... That's it for Shin Godzilla. We're going to be moving into Shin Ultraman in just a second here. And, hang tight.
All right.
So now it is time to talk about the newest release so far in the Shin series, Shin Ultraman. And so Ultraman is a fun character. He's been around not as long as Godzilla, probably 20 years after Godzilla, maybe a little bit less. I think he came out in the late 60s. Early 70s, but he is a massive fucking icon in Japanese culture, pop culture, what have you. And I don't have any Ultraman things up here, but that's because, honestly, outside of Shin Ultraman, the only like history I have with the character is I've watched the original series, at least the first 15 episodes. And then I watched Super Cyber Samurai Squad, or whatever the fuck it's called. I brought it up in a previous episode, and I even played the riff and everything. But it's all under the Ultraman thing, and Ultraman has had... Ultraman has had numerous series since his release. It is very... As opposed to Shin Godzilla, is very Power Rangers-esque. It really focuses on the tokusatsu aspect, or style, which is... someone transforming into a more powerful being or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's great that Hideaki Anno, once again, creator of Neon Genesis Evangelion, greatest anime ever, fight me, stepped up to the plate and did this, because it's shot very similar into the same way as Shin Godzilla, but this one is way more lighthearted.
Yeah. It's a very sharp contrast.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, it's because with Godzilla, like, you know, it's all about basically this idea of despair.
Yeah.
You know, just incoming and destruction of Tokyo.
And Ultraman's a hero.
Yeah. And, you know,
He's
basically
saving the day.
Yeah. And, like, you know, it seems like everything that, no matter what, he's not without his faults.
Yeah.
But, like, he represents hope.
Yeah. And it's like most great things from Japanese culture, the original theme song is an absolute banger. It's like Ultraman, here he comes from the sky. God. Here he comes from a rocket, like a rocket in the sky, from a distant planet far away, yeah, Ultraman, or something like that. It's super cheesy, very 70s, and I love it. And this is kind of like how we see, like how we talked in our Shin Godzilla a little bit, post Godzilla 1, where it's giant monsters fighting, but it's a giant alien man as a hero fighting monsters that appear on Earth.
Yeah. And the monsters are very unconventional.
Yeah.
And at first it's like we get an immediate homage to Godzilla himself. Right at the bat, it says Godzilla, Shin Godzilla, and like
right before the Shin Ultraman title.
Yeah, and we even get kind of like a weird kind of like mock Shin Godzilla. He's not really Shin Godzilla, but he's very Shin Godzilla-esque.
You look at him and you're like, that's Godzilla.
Yeah,
come on.
basically. But he's kind of a little bit spikier and stuff like that.
Right. What's interesting about this movie, though, is that it starts out where kaiju are already a thing, and it's actually the first kaiju that we see is a recreation from the kaiju of episode 3 of the original series.
Oh,
yeah,
really?
It starts out, you know, a little kid falls in the well, and as he's walking through the cave in the well, he sees like a big eye or whatever, and then the monster comes out. It's feeding on the electrical plant. It's the same monster. It's,
all right.
looks wise and everything.
So is it the invisible one?
The invisible one that feeds off the
yeah.
power.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
And so yeah, that's a episode 3 callback, and from what I can tell, there's a ton of callbacks in this movie. But like I said, what's cool about this one is that we already have kaijus established. You know, it's not like, oh my god, what is this thing? It's happening for the first time. How do we react? Like in Shin Godzilla, we literally see like 7 kaiju in a less than 5 minute span about like, oh, this appeared, we took care of it. This appeared, we took care of it. This appeared, we took care of it. And ultimately, they create the SSSP, which I'm going to look up what all of those S's stand for. You would think it's Super Cyber Samurai Protection or something like that, but it's not. It's the S-Class Species Suppression Protocol to take care of all of the kaiju. And yeah, they're just kind of banging it out one by one. Boom, boom, boom. This monster shows up, we got him. This monster shows up, we got it. And then when our first main monster shows up, the one that I said is a callback to episode 3. Out of nowhere, you know, all these things it's chaos, it's tearing everything up, and they're trying to figure out how to take care of it. Very callback to Shin Godzilla, just the way they shoot it and the way the dialogue is. And one of the members of the SSSP sees that there's a kid still running around, so he goes after to go save the kid. And he goes after to save the kid, and it cuts, you know, we don't see anything happen, but then fucking out of nowhere, Ultraman appears, crashes onto Earth, and we don't see him in his full red and silver. He's just all silver.
He's all silver. He doesn't have a color scheme yet.
Right.
He's blank.
So I think it's kind of like his true form,
Pure
coming
form,
from the planet of light or whatever the fuck he's from. And he kicks this fucking thing's ass. He's just like doing his thing. He does the fucking the beam.
Yep.
And it's super dope because he kind of looks corny. I'm not gonna lie.
And the way he moves.
Yeah, the way he moves is kind of corny.
Very stiff.
Yeah.
You know, it's when he flies, he basically retains, like, this position.
Oh, or like even more arched.
Yeah, just
like
completely,
this.
like, straight out. And even in, like, rotation, he doesn't alter from that.
Oh my god, it's hilarious because he lands and he goes to kick this thing, but he doesn't land on the ground. He spins in a circle.
Like, and he maintains completely in an ice.
Like a plank.
Yeah, he just completely planks and doesn't flinch or anything. But it's effective.
It's fun.
Yeah.
It's very fun. And you have to walk into this with a different perspective than Shin Godzilla.
Exactly. It's a completely different flavor.
So he kicks this thing's ass, and then Ultraman flies away. He's not even Ultraman at this point. They name him Ultraman afterwards because it's a really funny bit is that the chief of the SSSP likes naming the kaiju. And they're like, how does he think of all these names? Like, he just does it. He just thinks of a name and that's it. And even when they go, like, because they bring in someone else from intelligence to help them figure out who Ultraman is or the alien or the kaiju.
Is it the new chick?
Yeah, it's the new girl.
Right.
And she shows up and she makes a report for the chief. And they're like, oh, how's the new girl doing? And they're like, she's doing pretty good. She's very thorough. And they hand him, the chief, a packet. It's like, oh, information on Shin Ultraman. Opens it up. It's just a blank page that says inconclusive or like no information or anything. So that's pretty funny. There's a lot of, like I said, there's more lighthearted. There's more comedy. It's very funny. And what's great because I think when we watched they had a little bit before the movie started in the theater, and Hideaki Anno was talking about the response he got. He's like, I was really worried because when I released this movie in Japan, Japanese audiences are very shy. They're very like timid and not, reactive. So I thought everyone hated it. He's like, all the points where I'm like, oh, that's funny, or I did this to be this. No one reacted, but it was just the Japanese audiences. So when he brought it to America, everyone was like, yeah, woo, because we're fucking Americans. We're like, he blasts that kaiju and everyone's like, yeah, fuck yeah, he's screaming and shit.
That's great, man. It's great that they're appreciative of, like, expressive audience.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, that's cool.
So, yeah, the chief likes naming the kaiju. They name it Ultraman. And that's when our second monster appears. It's this drill-nosed, drill-headed, walks on all four beast.
It's got a different, because it's tunneling underground and it's, it's burrowing. And I forgot, he's trying to implement it. He's trying to attack it, right? Like, but he's doing...
Well, they call in America to drop bombs on it.
Yeah.
They're dropping bombs on it. And then when they run out of bombs, they're like, well, we ran out of bombs. It'll be another 6 months till we get more. Yes. And then the chief is like, make sure you bill the other people for that, not us, blah, blah, blah. He's like, he's kind of the goofball, and that's fun.
Yeah.
And so... Ultraman appears again, but this time we see him in his silver and red outfit that we're very used to.
Correct.
So something's different.
We also noticed too that what's-his-face comes back in the guy...
it's like...
the guy that wants to go rescue the kid, he finally comes back when Ultraman disappears. And his partner, the new girl...
Kaminaga is the name of the main guy who becomes Ultraman.
Kaminaga, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
We gotta remember this. Kaminaga.
Yeah, remember.
Kami. We'll call him Kami.
So, but yeah, he's weird. He comes back and he's kind of weird. We see him flipping through pages of books really fast. And his response is very alien and goofy.
Yeah.
And the dynamic between him and the new girl that they brought in, who's our second main character, it's very fun because he's very alien and she's very goofy and dynamic. And she has this like, I want to be your buddy relationship with him, and he's just kind of standoffish.
He's very foreign, and it's like he doesn't know how to be just a person. He's very introverted. And,
right.
Jesus Christ, it's almost a little bit too familiar.
So he's all weird, and this new kaiju is targeting a nuclear waste plant, and so Ultraman comes in, and it's almost like they see that he understands that this monster cannot attack the nuclear waste plant.
Right.
Like, it's weird. They're like, oh,
it recognizes the threat, like, the situation.
Right. And they see this time it's very clear that he's trying to help them. So, of course, Ultraman in pure Ultraman fashion kicks this monster's ass. Like, this thing kind of, like, sticks its drills into a mountain, pulls itself up on its hind legs. Its drill head opens up and it exposes its real head, and it's about to shoot a blast, and Ultraman just walks up and cold cocks this thing right in the fucking face.
But the first thing it does, it basically depletes a shit ton of Ultraman's power. He changes color.
Right,
like,
he changes
turns
to green.
Right. Yeah. And that's when they also notice that the monster is a variation of a previous monster.
Another one that ate nuclear waste and stuff like that. Yeah, they're like, it's got the same head, it's got the same body, but
Different
it's almost
stuff.
interchangeable.
Right.
So Ultraman kicks this thing's ass, and it actually takes it away off into space this time, which they notice. I'm like, that's weird. It's almost like he's getting rid of it for us. And, God, what happens after that? Back on track. Sorry about that. So anyway, at this point, Ultraman hasn't shown up in a little bit after the fight, and the SSSP are just going about their business. And all of a sudden, all the people in like the office with all the computers and everything short circuits, and we get our main, well, not our main antagonist, but our first antagonist in the movie, Zarab.
Yeah, like sentient antagonist.
Right.
The one that's not a kaiju.
Right. He's an alien from another planet, and he comes in wearing a trench coat and a top hat, but he's still a fucking. He looks like a Power Rangers monster in a coat.
Less
and a top
than
hat.
that, he just looks like just basically almost a 2D drawing, and
Right.
it's all intentional. It's funny, but at the same time, he's very much a caricature.
It's goofy.
Yeah, it's silly.
And so basically, his plan is he comes in and tries to trick all of Japan and be like, oh, I landed here, so I want to be allies with you guys. I'm going to give you power, this and that. You just have to sign over everything to me. And his whole plan is to make everyone fight each other for humans to destroy each other. And not only that, but he gets rid of Ultraman for a bit, subdues him, and then impersonates Ultraman and destroys a bunch of the city. So everyone thinks Ultraman's a bad guy now.
Right. And the thing is like, it's kind of like right from the get, he's just sweet talking. He's sweet talking the shit out of Japanese,
and they're buying into it. Yeah. They're eating it up. They love it.
Yeah, they just love it. And but the SSSP.
Yep.
It's like, I don't know, man. Like, they're just not really feeling this guy. And he does all kinds of weird shit. He destroys all their data on Ultraman and everything. Yeah. And then he's like, oh, I'm sorry of that. And he just gives it all back.
Yeah.
Shit like that. It's just like, he's too good to be true.
Yeah, he's a weird. Obviously, we can see that he's a bad guy, but all of the bigwigs in Japan are like, "Oh yeah, he's gonna." There's even like pictures of him in offices shaking hands and shit with his goofy little Muppet hand.
What the hell is that one thing? Like, how does they ask him a question about Ultraman? Like, how does such and such and such work? And they're like, why don't you ask him? It was just something.
Well, it's like, oh, where does Ultraman get his power? Spaceium 133.
Right.
How does Ultraman do this? Spaceium 133. Well, can you elaborate? I don't know.
It's so funny, dude. Like, just that interaction and everything there was great.
It's very goofy, but very Power Rangers-y. If you're looking at it from a serious perspective, it's very fun.
But it's self-aware.
Right.
It's its own thing.
So we get, ultimately the buddy cop of Kaminaga finds out that something's up and that Kaminaga's missing, and she goes to find him. And there's a really cool scene of him. Zarab's got Kaminaga all tied up in like some barren, like a building or whatever.
Yeah.
And he's doing his own thing. And the girl shows up with a chainsaw and kicks the door down, and she's there to save him or whatever. And she gets him out of the chair. She saves him. He turns into Ultraman. Well, no. Zarab realizes that he's escaping, and Ultraman turns into Ultraman, and they have a big fight with each other. We get our first real, like, intense fight in the movie.
Yeah.
And it's fun in between scenes of Ultraman flying around the city looking silly as fuck. Just like... Just like this. Just like... Woo, and not moving his body at all as he soars through the Japan skyline.
Like, he does not change. Like, his body does not flex. Or,
it's hilarious.
Yeah,
but ultimately, Ultraman defeats Zarab, and he's gone. But then, all of a sudden, another alien shows up, and he's like, oh, I'm the first alien. I showed up actually before Ultraman.
Everybody else.
Yeah. And wants basically kind of the same thing as Zarab, just kind of like to everyone sign over everything. He wants total control of the planet. Right. But Ultraman's not having it. He disagrees with him. And then ultimately they get into a tiff and they fight each other. And I'm trying to... After they fight each other, because this bad guy realizes, like, oh, I'm going to have to talk to the higher-ups.
They basically kind of end up in a stalemate.
Yeah.
Because he looks over his shoulder. He sees another one from the planet of light.
I'm trying to remember. It's what's his?
I don't remember his name.
Zophi. It's Zophi.
Zophi. Yes. He sees Zophi behind him, and he's like, "Okay, I'm out."
Yep.
Like he gets scared.
Yep.
And that also means trouble for Ultraman.
Right. So after all of this, after the fight, we see Ultraman, aka in Kaminaga's body, in the woods. And he's actually looking over what happened initially. So when Ultraman crash landed onto Earth, he actually killed Kaminaga, who was trying to save this kid, and realizing what he had done, merged with him to basically save his life as payment.
So they kind of became essentially one being.
The same. And he's the first being of light to fuse with a human, which is against the order of the being of light,
right.
or
it's
the
kind
planet
of
light.
it's kind of like being corrupted, I would imagine.
Exactly.
You know?
And Zophi basically tells Ultraman, he's like, look, we're gonna destroy this planet. Humans destroy each other. We see it as no different. They could be a destructive force if they were given the power of the Beta Box, which is the item that transforms Ultraman or whoever into their bigger versions of themselves. And so he's like, look, I'm going to activate this thing that's going to destroy the planet. And that's that, And Ultraman's like, fuck you. Well, he doesn't say fuck you because he's a Japanese. He's very polite. He's just like, oh, no. And so he activates this basically doomsday weapon to destroy Earth. And Ultraman has to go take care of it. He flies off into space. He's trying to figure out how to take care of this thing. And ultimately what he has to do is create a black hole to suck this bomb up into it. And in the process, he sucks himself up into it.
It's like within like a thousandths of a fucking second that he has to operate within this spectrum. And he does it. And it's a cool, effective way that they do it.
So after all of that, Zophi's talking to Ultraman again. He's just like, look, you gotta leave here. You shouldn't be here in the first place. But Ultraman decides that he wants to stay on the planet and protect it. And it basically, after that fight, it cuts to Kaminaga. I think Ultraman in this movie sacrifices himself to give Kaminaga back life, basically more so than before. He makes him more of Kaminaga, or puts his soul back into him.
Right. More of his own being, his persona.
Exactly.
Right.
And he wakes up around the SSSP, and they're all like, oh my gosh, are you okay? And then the movie ends.
Yeah.
And so, comparative to Shin Godzilla, this movie's totally different, but the same. It's the same flavor, but not at the same time.
It's completely different, I guess, in tone, but it still it plays on the same, I guess, tropes and
sure.
Basically the structure.
Yeah,
really is similarly. It's it's basically a political commentary or satire. This one is a little more just Japan's dependence on basically, or not just Japan, but basically the power grab for any fucking nation.
Sure.
Anybody that has this power that's provided for them, they're gonna fucking jump on it if it's available to them.
And now that you say power grab, it makes me think, because as opposed to Shin Godzilla is about how Japan responds to an opposing force, an opposing power, and how they tackle that. And this is how they respond to a force that is destructive but beneficial to them.
Right.
They handle it totally differently, and they almost fall apart just as easily as if Godzilla was in Japan destroying it.
But it's just that, all those core and those fucking issues are just so. It's just crazy that we're getting this much depth.
Yeah.
In friggin' kaiju movies.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
And especially something like Shin Ultraman, like we said, is less and more lighthearted and everything than Shin Godzilla.
Right, like I said, it's like an antithesis.
Right, it's I don't know how you could take Power Rangers and make it serious and but still entertaining, and I think Shin Ultraman did that and knocked it out of the park.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
so
100%.
I would highly suggest Shin Ultraman. It's like we said, a totally different flavor than Shin Godzilla. If you're just looking for good, lighthearted kaiju fighting, but still with an entertaining story in between. I think the in-between kaiju stuff in Shin Ultraman is more entertaining for a particular audience.
Yeah, for sure.
Than Shin Godzilla. I think a lot of people are turned off by Shin Godzilla's
burn.
excessive dialogue.
Yeah, it's definitely much more of like a slower burn. It's I don't know.
But in this one, there's human characters to like.
Right.
In Shin Godzilla, you don't really like. Oh, I really like that guy.
No, but I mean, you get it though. It's because it's like you're comparing characters that are more of like an. It's so weird because it's a much more dire situation. That there are certain people that you understand the frustration in Godzilla.
Sure.
Of those people involved, and that that makes those characters endearing, Okay. And I really felt that.
Okay.
That I get the frustration of not being taken seriously.
Sure.
And then when shit falls apart, you're like you're the guy saying "I told you so."
Yeah. See,
and I've been that fucking guy so many times, and every time it happens, I'm looking at the world fucking burning around them.
That's how I feel about whenever a Fantastic Four movie comes out. I'm just like, I told you so.
And it sucks, dude. And it's like...
As long as Tim Heidecker's in it.
Right. Please. But, yeah, I never thought about it like that. I never walked away from that movie with that perspective.
I did.
I find that interesting.
I felt that frustration. And I personally, but outside of that, I appreciate the movie, what it is, just for its commentary on what it means to Japanese people.
Sure.
I mean, fuck, dude. Like, it's that would be something to make a movie about, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's definitely more, prominent.
And exactly. Especially for a character like Godzilla, it makes perfect sense,
And with that in mind, I am super stoked to see what they do with Shin Kamen Rider. It's gonna be fucking cool, man, because there's only one video clip of it out right now, and it's just basically a recreation of the theme song with clips of the movie, and it has the same bad guy as the first episode, which is the Spider-Man, not Japanese Spider-Man, who does the dance or whatever. He doesn't. Leopardon doesn't show up.
That's a damn shame.
Right, but I mean, we'll probably see some Megazord tokusatsu shit in Kamen Rider for sure, because it was kind of the pioneer for the tokusatsu genre.
I remember hearing that Kamen Rider was the most controversial, overly westernized.
Okay.
Yeah, overly localized, I guess, when it made its transition to U.S.
Yeah,
which I get because I remember watching a couple episodes and it's fucking awful.
Oh, dude, it's great. I love it. And it's speaking of, I did a deep dive with Ultraman because after we watched Shin Ultraman, they had I rewatched the original series again, and if you I was trying to get Nick. I was like, Nick, you gotta watch at least the first episode of the original Ultraman. The special effects are so fucking goofy, and it's just pure sci-fi. They're called the Science Patrol. It's hilarious.
I feel like that's kind of why Ultraman was so stiff, because they kind of want to retain that corniness.
Absolutely.
It's a thing.
And if you read comic books, Marvel did an Ultraman series called The Rise of Ultraman not that long, maybe a couple years ago at this point. I bought it as it came out, a couple issues. I just read the first issue after we went and saw the movie, and it was pretty solid for a Marvel comic book. No offense, Marvel. But you're not doing great these days.
But fucking Moon Knight's your highlight.
What is it streaming on?
It's not streaming on anything. In fact, it's highly illegal to watch it any other way than the movie theater and buying it on Blu-ray. But there
I mean the original Ultraman.
Oh, the original
series.
Ultraman? Oh, I have it on DVD. Anyone can certainly borrow it. It's super fun. It's got all the planes and everything.
You got that shit on DVD?
Yeah, I bought it from King Video when they went out of business.
Oh, really?
Oh, dude.
Wow.
That was the first Ultraman I was exposed to was from King Video.
Yeah. Hey, rest in peace, King Video.
Mine was from the American one from the 90s, way back in the day.
Yeah.
So far removed from any traditional Japanese shit, or original Japanese shit.
It's really great. The planes all look like Thunderbirds. You know the show Thunderbirds with the puppets and everything? It's that same style. It's hilarious. Yeah. But anyway, Ultraman, I really liked it. I think you will too. If you didn't like Shin Godzilla, you might like Shin Ultraman. But if you like Shin Godzilla and Shin Ultraman...
Fuck you if you didn't like Shin Godzilla. If you didn't like Shin Godzilla... I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
I got excited.
I know.
You're a piece of shit if you don't like Shin Godzilla. Well,
you know what? You just don't like art.
Yeah.
If you don't like Shin Godzilla.
Shin Godzilla's just fucking...
And there's no place for you here if you don't like art.
That tail.
All 16 of you. You're true artists.
Sages.
Right.
All the 16 of you people are sages, just like us. Come on.
But anyway, that's all we got for this this episode, our Shinniest episode ever. We talked about Shin Godzilla, we talked about Shin Ultraman, and I'm sure in the future we'll probably end up talking about Shin Kamen Rider.
Probably.
Yeah, and maybe in the future episode I'll throw Nick a bone and be like, hey, you pick something. And
We gotta have a
watch it.
Nick episode. We'll have like we'll have
Can we just do a James Bond one? Can we just talk about 007?
We can talk,
Like,
but yeah,
We
I
can,
feel
but
like-
does it have to be my episode? It can be
Yes.
our episode.
No. We'll have a separate because I feel like everybody can get on a love fest for Daniel Craig Bond movies. Like I feel like that's like a thing.
yeah.
But Nick definitely needs like a Die Hard episode. Not Die Hard. Hardware.
Hardware.
What the fuck am I thinking? Die Hard.
I was like,
Not
I
Die
don't
Hard.
ever
Hardware.
remember Nick liking Die
No,
Hard.
Hardware. We got fucking Nick should have his fucking time to shine and.
He will. He certainly will in the future. But anyway, thank you all for joining us for this episode. If you liked whatever you saw today, make sure you click that like button or subscribe to us as we build our community. We appreciate all of you that came back to watch this week's episode. This week, this month, whatever it may be. We're adults with struggling schedules, so we put out episodes whenever we feel like it. But anyway,
All 16 of you.
yeah, no offense. Thanks for hanging tight. But anyway, this has been Unpopular, the pop culture podcast. It's a pop culture podcast.
And you're not even drunk.
And I'm not even drunk. And I'm Larry.
And I'm James.
And
I'm Nick Airlock Shock Haskin. Keep an ear and eye out on the radar for a new episode on Nightmare Fuel Streaming. Whenever I get to it. I wrote the script. We still gotta shoot it.
and we'll get there. We'll definitely get there. And if you haven't checked out our other YouTube channel, Nightmare Fuel Streaming, make sure to check that out. We mostly talk, it was just me and Nick. We talk about horror movies, sci-fi movies, and that's basically it because we both like real horror and sci-fi. And we had our own shows, The Tape Tomb and Airlock Shock, respectively. So check that out, Nightmare Fuel Streaming. And if not, we will see you on the next one.
Cheers.
Good hang.